In the freezing forest of Eastern Europe, two massive invasion forces lie in ruin. Separated by 83 years, the wreckage belongs to different generations, but the mistakes that put them there are identical. In February 2022, the world watched thousands of Russian tanks roll towards the Ukrainian border. Global intelligence agencies and military analysts looked at the raw numbers and calculated that the defending military would be overwhelmed and dismantled in a matter of days. Those calculations missed a historical precedent that played out almost exactly the same way. In November 1939, the Soviet Union launched an invasion into neighboring Finland, triggering the Winter War. The Soviet military possesses an overwhelming advantage in manpower and armor, expecting to march into the capital within 2 weeks. The Soviet war machine in 1939 was hobbled from the inside out. Joseph Stalin had recently purged his own officer corps, executing or imprisoning his most experienced tacticians. The leadership that remained was terrified to deliver bad news. They fed the dictator highly sanitized intelligence, promising him that the Finnish workers would openly welcome Soviet troops with a victory parade. 8 decades later, the command structure in Moscow operated on the exact same flawed premise. An isolated inner circle removed from objective ground truth, assured leadership that the Ukrainian government would instantly collapse and the Russian soldiers would be greeted as liberators. When a military apparatus replaces objective reality with the political desires of its leader, it stops planning for a war and starts planning for a parade. That friction between dictatorial expectation and battlefield reality leads massive armies directly into systemic, fatal traps. The first trap is Earth itself. In 1939, the Soviet Union sent highly mechanized units into the dense forest and subarctic snowdrifts of Finland. The extreme terrain meant that tanks and heavy supply trucks could not operate off-road, funneling these massive divisions into a handful of narrow, predictable dirt paths. In Ukraine, the Russian military countered Repetitsia. This regional phenomenon turns unpaved ground into deep, impassable clay mud from melting snow and spring rains. To avoid sinking, Russian convoys in early 2022 had to abandon the open fields and confine their vehicles to paved highways. This diagram shows how an environmental bottleneck neutralizes numerical superiority. Invading forces cannot deploy in wide formations, instead thousands of vehicles must compress into a single column. If defending forces destroy the lead and rear vehicle, the entire line instantly becomes a stationary parking lot. In the forest of Karelia, the highways leading to Kiev, the natural environment dictated the terms of the engagement. It stripped the larger armies of their maneuverability and set the stage for a methodical dismantling. To exploit these trapped columns, the Finnish military developed a tactic called the Motti. In Finnish, a Motti is a cubic meter of chopped firewood. On the battlefield, it became a strategy to segment a large, unwieldy enemy force into smaller, isolated pockets and systematically chop it into pieces. Finnish soldiers executed the Motti utilizing local knowledge and extreme winter mobility. Operating on skis in white camouflage, they moved like ghosts in the snow. They ignored the heavily armored tanks at the front of the line and launched rapid hit-and-run attacks on the softer supply vehicles further back. 83 years later, Ukrainian light infantry applied this exact same logic to stop Russian push towards the capital. They recognized that a tank without diesel fuel is just a multi-million-dollar pillbox. The technology upgraded, but the mechanics of the Motti remained intact. Skis and Molotov cocktails were replaced by agile pickup trucks, anti-tank missiles and first-person view drones. Small and highly mobile Ukrainian teams bypassed the thickest armor, navigating through the forests. They launched precision strikes targeted fuel tankers, hitting supply lines and mobile command centers. Asymmetric warfare requires a smaller force to avoid direct head-to-head clashes of firepower. By deliberately targeting logistics, the defending force starved the mechanized giants of fuel and ammunition, leaving them to freeze on the roads. Destroying a supply truck is a mechanical victory, but the true effectiveness of these ambushes rely on exploiting a deep organizational flaw within the invading armies. This rigid vertical hierarchy defines Russian military structures. If the command link is severed, lower units freeze, waiting for instructions. Contrast this with mission command used by Ukrainian forces. When a line breaks, surrounding nodes immediately adapt and continue fighting. On the battlefield, this organizational clash is devastating. When a Russian column was ambushed and its command vehicle destroyed, the surviving troops were terrified to retreat without orders, lacking authority to advance. They simply froze in place, waiting to be targeted next. A massive advantage in artillery shells, tanks and aircraft cannot secure victory if soldiers are culturally paralyzed in the fog of war. The rigid hierarchy turns localized confusion into complete systemic failure. When a highly centralized superpower realizes its attempt at a rapid, complex blitzkrieg has collapsed, it does not surrender. It pivots to the one advantage it has left: sheer brutal mass. The strategy reverts from tactical maneuverability to a grinding war of attrition, echoing the battlefields of World War I. Defending soldiers sit in freezing mud-soaked trenches, enduring thousands of incoming shells a day, holding the line against wave after wave of advancing infantry. An agile, decentralized military can absolutely outmaneuver, outsmart and bleed out a rigid superpower. But that defense is not a clean, rapid victory. It's a grueling, proactive war of survival, where the cost of outlasting a giant is paid in generations of blood and the absolute destruction of cities they are fighting to protect.